Good morning and welcome to week 4 of Introduction to Dreamweaver, Spring 2011 at Santa Rosa Junior College. Today we are going to go into Cascading Style Sheets in great detail. But before we do that, I want to cover a couple of things from last week's work. First thing, there were a couple of people in class who had some error messages recorded on their validation errors. Let me restate that. There are a couple of people who in their homework assignment had HTML validation errors. I want to just point out that there are little things that will cause validation errors that should be pretty easy to fix if you're going to the W3C website to take a look at it. So here's how I'll walk you through it. I'm going to create a new HTML page by selecting File, New. And I'm going to make it 2-column, fixed left sidebar, header, and footer. And I just want to check something in here very quickly. I've got a code view, and good. Okay. This page by default is going to give you an error message for XHTML strict. So I want to make sure, first of all, that I have my document type declaration, or DTD, set to XHTML 1.0 strict. And this is also a response to those people who were questioning on the forum, how do you change your doc type? File, convert, and then you choose your doc type. And I just choose XHTML 1.0 strict. Now, when I go and test this page, I'll have to save this as, well, first of all, I want to be in the right website, and I'll talk about the importance of this later as well. Okay, just give me a second to do just a couple little things. No, let's try this here, local. Good. Okay, so I'm going to select this file and save as, and I'm going to just call this bad code. It's a lot like bad dog, except it's not as messy. So I have bad code opened here. I'll click on Preview Debug in Chrome, and that's something else that we'll be able to talk about. But you can see it says student.santarosa.edu /JDiamond/bad_code.html. Now, I didn't put in the W3C validation here, but there's several ways that I can check that using the Web Developer Toolbar that is required from the first week of class. When you install the Web Developer Toolbar, it shows up in Google like this, in Google Chrome like this little icon. So I can click on the Web Developer Toolbar icon, and I can choose Tools, and I could go Validate HTML. I click on Validate HTML, and I should get, oh, darn it, I should have gotten an error message there. Geez. Let me see if I can find, this is going to take me a second, and I apologize for that. What I was expecting here, by the way, is if we look at this page again, and I go into Code View, there is a it took it out when I changed this. Okay, I'm going to insert some bad code here. Name equal logo placeholder. Okay, and name always would have, this name is related to programming, JavaScript type stuff. But you will see now that when I put that attribute into this insert logo insert logo code, and now I check this in Web Developer, validate HTML. Yes. Okay, so you see now it says 1 error found while checking this document as XHTML 1.0 strict. The first thing you want to do when you get this error is not bang your head against the wall. The first thing that you want to do is you want to scroll down and read where it says validation output, and then look at the line number. The line number is going to coincide with the line number in code view in Dreamweaver. The column number is actually the character in the line. So the line number is the line in your code, and the column number is the character in that line. And here it says, in XHTML 1.0 strict, there is no attribute name. Okay, so what you have to do is go back to your code, go back to Dreamweaver, that is, and then go to Code View. And there I see on line 134, that's the 50-second character. I take that out. There's an extra, what happened there? I don't know why. Oh, yeah, I see why that is. Okay, I take that out and I save it. And I upload it again. I check the code, validation, tools, validate HTML, and now it passes. So you need to go through that process every time you post your page, otherwise you're going to lose points or portions of points unnecessarily. So questions about how to check your markup. Any questions about that? Christina has a question. Please feel free. I used the underscore blank target as the book showed, and the validator said document type strict does not support. That's correct. So the book may ask you to do something like that within the lesson, and the book lessons are set to XHTML 1.0 transitional. My homework assignments never ask you to use underscore blank target. So you need to make sure that when you're doing lessons from the book, you follow the doc type that the book is asking for, and when you're doing lessons for the homework assignments, you're following the doc type that I asked for from the beginning, which is XHTML 1.0 strict. The fact that those are different, and the fact that those are different is just really the way it is. I mean, you work with different clients, and you're going to have to set your doc type differently if the client wants, I want this to open up in another browser window, then you're going to either have to know the JavaScript to make that happen with XHTML, making sure that it validates the strict, or you're going to have to use the underscore blank target, in which case you would use a transitional doc type. Okay, I tried changing it, but the options it gave me had the same. I don't understand what that means. The options what gave you had the same response. If you change to XHTML 1.0 transitional, that will validate. Oh yeah, anything having to do with target is going to be invalid when it comes to XHTML 1.0 strict. That's why as we're entering 2013 and HTML5 becomes more of the standard, target will validate for HTML5. Other questions? Okay, nobody else. Good. Okay, so I'm going to go on to one other thing to show. And this has to do also with just a little clarification in terms of workflow. When you're working on, and I'm going to put a little marker in here, working on, how about book files versus homework assignments. Okay, so we're talking a little about working on the files out of the book to just learn the concepts that I don't cover to the exact specifications of the book, and also at the same time the greatest portion of your time for my class is spent on the homework assignments that I assign you. But they're both important parts of the class. So as I said at the first week, when you're working out of the book files, you have a site definition called Digital Classroom Lessons. For the homework assignments, you have the site definition that was required for the Homework 2 assignment, which is Intro to Dreamweaver. So those are two separate site definitions. When you're working in the book files, when you're working out of the book, every week you are going to be changing the local path to your book files. In other words, here's my Digital Classroom Lessons site definition. This is week 4 and I'm working on lesson 4. So I want to click on that drop-down arrow in the Files panel and choose Manage. And then click on the Edit the Currently Selected Site icon or double-click on the name of the site. Each one will bring up the Site Setup dialog box. For the Digital Classroom Lessons, we're not connecting to the Internet. We're just checking our files locally. So all I have to do is go to where it says Local Site Folder and click on the Browse for Folder icon. And now, since I'm on to week 4, I'm going to browse for the DW04 Lessons folder, click on Open, and then click on Select. And then I click on Save, I click on OK, I click on Done. Now my site definitions, I'm going to close this page, my site definition for the Digital Classroom Lesson book is pointing directly to the DW04 folder. Now I finished the lesson, I work really fast, and I am going to start working on my homework. So I change which site I'm working in. I choose my Intro to Dreamweaver site. I open up my page from within Intro to Dreamweaver, and I see my file is listed there. And in this case, it looks like I have a bad link to this file, so I can just check it, and there's no files that I have in there. I can fix that a little later on. But the idea is that anytime you're working for your homework assignments, you always want to be inside of that Intro to Dreamweaver site definition that you set up in class when we were at week 2, right? So this site definition is related to your homework, okay? And as I showed in the first class, the other site definition is related to your digital classroom lessons. Okay? One more thing about, I'm going to go back to the Digital Classroom Lessons for a second, and I'm going to open up a page from Digital Classroom Lessons. I'm going to close this homework 2 from my Intro to Dreamweaver site. When I look at this page and I preview it in a browser now, this is something that I saw on the forum. People were talking about what happens when you preview in browser. When I preview in Chrome for my digital classroom lesson, which does not have a remote site defined, when I click on preview, it's going to preview my files locally. So we see file, see users. You know, this is a path to where my files are located. And Dave is asking, what about CSS validation? Should we be performing this along with HTML validation? No, this class doesn't require that we validate our CSS right now. Okay? But back to what I was saying. When you're working on the digital classroom lessons, because of the fact that there is no remote site definition, when you launch a browser, it's going to show you a local path as your web URL. That's very important to understand. So, are there any questions about that? Maggie, Christina, and Dave are typing. Should we add the CSS logo to our home page for validation? You do not need to do that for right now. Will we be able to validate from the local site? That's a great question. I'll address that in 1 second. How can we find a local path for our homework files? Okay, 2 excellent questions that I am going to handily dispatch. So, the first question, how do you validate from the local site? The great thing about the Web Developer Toolbar, and this time I'm going to open up the Web Developer, no, I'll leave it here in Chrome, and I'll show you it's located in a different place in Firefox. But the great thing about the Web Developer Toolbar is when you click on that gear icon, you can go to the category tools, and instead of choosing validate HTML, you can validate local HTML. When you click on that, it actually takes the content of your page and it actually sends you to, oh, wait a second, validate by URL. This is a little strange. This is new. We should be able to validate just theoretically without doing anything. It looks like you have to validate by file upload now. Okay, this is new, but we'll choose file. And this is a little bit more cumbersome. Nevertheless, it works. You go to where that local file is located, and in this case, it's in my Intro to Dreamweaver folder, Dreamweaver CS6, Dreamweaver Lessons, Lessons 4, and that was product. I choose the file, I click on check. And it loads the file into the W3C markup validation service. So that's how you validate the site locally. Next question, how can we find a local path for our homework files? Okay, if you want to view your web page for your homework files locally without uploading it because you're concerned that it's going to have an error and you just don't want to upload all the time until you're finished, there are several things you can do. But one thing certainly is to find the local path to your homework files. To find a local path to your homework files, you just go File, Open, and in Chrome you'd have to select where is it? Chrome has gotten much less of my favorite. It's lost its luster for me. File, Open. I bet you there's a keyboard shortcut, Command O. Control O. Yep. So Control O, just like any other time you want to open up a file, Control O, you can choose whatever file you want. And let's say I want to find my homework file. So I go to, where's websites? There we go. There's websites, there's Intro to Dreamweaver, there's Homework 2. Okay, so now I'm looking at that assignment locally, as you can see here in the web URL. File, C, users, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so now I do apologize that I used the keyboard shortcut and cannot find in the Google Chrome menu how on earth you just select File Open. But that's not my fault, folks. That's Google's fault. And I am feeling very self-righteous about that. So, gosh, just make File Open something that's easy to find. Okay, now I'm coming down off of my soapbox. I'm not going to drink any more coffee today. Okay, so copying and pasting your HTML file in the validator. I haven't tried that, Dave, but if that's the case, try it and let us know definitively if that works. Another thing that was mentioned on the forum, and just shows you that I actually do read the forum. Another thing that was mentioned is that you can create your settings within your file directory structure that make a particular file type open by default with a certain application when you click on it. By the way, this is my cat here. He's very friendly. Okay, so if I have a file here, let me go to my website and go to Intro to Dreamweaver. If I right-click on this file, I can choose Open With, and then I can go Default Program and choose the default program that the file will open with. So I can open it with, you can't see Adobe Dreamweaver CS7. Sorry, can't show that to you. But I can choose to open it with any browser or, with my Dreamweaver application. So that way, you don't have to go through that hunt for the file open, the file open menu in Chrome. You simply double-click on the file and it opens it in Chrome. Okay. On the Mac side, I believe it is by selecting the file, you'll see if you control-click or right-click, you'll see there's a info menu, and down towards the bottom of the info menu on the Mac side, it shows you which application that you're going to open it with by default. So you can reassign your default application to open a particular file type easily on both Mac and PC. Okay? Other questions? So when I use the Preview and Browser button in Dreamweaver, it will pull from the uploaded file automatically. Well, yes. So what Christina is asking about here is related to the site definition that we created in Dreamweaver. Let's get back to our Introduction to Dreamweaver site definition. That's the site definition for the homework files. I'll have one of those files open, just so we know that we've got the right site directory. When I choose Manage Sites and double-click on Intro to Dreamweaver, and I go to Servers, it's this right here where it says Testing. This is what makes the file that this is what makes the Preview and Browser button take the file and upload it, because we're choosing to test it live on the student server. Now, some people might think, oh gosh, that's kind of risky. Well, if that's the case for you, you can always turn that off. The reason that I do that is I like one-stop shopping. I like the ability for you to create your page and not have to use this file management and click on put and then go to open up the browser and do it. If you just go preview in browser, boom, it all gets taken care of on its own. So for some people that feels risky, then you have another option. You can also preview with temporary file, and I talked about that last week. If I go Edit, Preferences, and I choose Preview in Browser, you can say Options, Preview using temporary file. And that way, even when you click Preview in Browser, what it will do, and just to show you, is it will upload a temporary file. So we see it says student.santorosa.edu/tilde-j-diamond, and then it doesn't say HW2, it says TMP blah 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 blah. Okay, so it creates a temp file that lives up on the remote server for a while. And since I'm just slightly OCD, I don't like to have temp files that I don't know why they're there up on the server. So I like to live dangerously, do my work, preview it live. Okay, but if you prefer to have temporary previewing in temporary file, you can still leave that testing server check mark there, but simply go to your preferences and put a check mark where it says preview using temporary file. Okay? So here we're just talking about previewing files and uploading files, and this is the stuff underneath the surface. This is the stuff that is important to have a really full and complete understanding. The fastest, easiest way is to use Command-O. It works on all my browsers. Can't find any other way to find and open files. Okay, well, if that works for you, then do it that way. Okay. One other thing I do want to show you having to do with Web Developer Toolbar is if I choose Preview in Firefox, it's going to launch Firefox here, and it takes a minute for that to happen. Okay, Adobe Dreamweaver not responding now. Oh, I see a little spinning happening, some spinning. Where is Firefox hiding? Let's see if I can find it. There it is. Yeah. Okay, so here's Firefox. And I'm closing some additional windows here. What we see with Firefox is the Web Developer Toolbar. I like Firefox more these days because I can view my toolbars a lot easier. And it doesn't even look like I've got my Web Developer Toolbar installed. So why don't I do that? Why don't I select Tools? Oh, there's Web Developer Toolbar right there. Tools, Web Developer, and I'll choose to have the Web Developer Toolbar show up. And in this case, we're seeing it down here. And I can click on More Tools, and I can choose, wait a second, I can choose Inspect. No, this doesn't look like the Web Developer Toolbar that I'm thinking of. This looks like maybe this is something built into the latest version of Firefox. So I'm going to choose Add-ons, and I'm going to choose Get Add-ons, and I'm going to choose Web Developer, and click on Search. And there's the Web Developer Toolbar that I'm talking about from Chris Pederek. And I'm going to restart Firefox. And there's my Web Developer Toolbar. Let me clear this out because there's lots of things on the screen here. And let's just have the Web Developer Toolbar that I'm talking about. Oh no, that was the one. Toolbars, Web Developer. Let me get rid of this thing down here. Okay, so if I'm on my homework examples page, here's my Web Developer toolbar, and I'm starting to like Firefox. There was a while there that I was liking Chrome better, and I do like Chrome better for certain things having to do with connecting to various Google services. But I do like Firefox better these days for a lot of other reasons. You can see right here I can choose Tools and I can validate HTML. I could also validate local HTML. And if I had some local HTML to validate, this page wasn't local, so it's kind of hanging up in mid-space here. Let's see if I can do this a different way. Open File, and I am curious to see how it handles looking at files locally. Okay, so now we'll go Tools, Validate Local HTML. And it's taking its sweet little time. And I will just let that, do its little thing while we can address any other questions. But the main thing I wanted to show you here is that the current version of Firefox displays the submenus of the Web Developer toolbar much nicer at the bottom of the screen. And it also gives you a much easier to navigate menu at the top, whereas Chrome has apparently eliminated any toolbar at the top. I'm pretty experienced with computers. It might be there somewhere, but I can't find it for the life of me. So Firefox also works better when it comes to working in coming into my online office hours and sharing your screen. So these are well, if your Mac Firefox doesn't have the File button, what you need to do is you need to add it in. It's a toolbar. If you see toolbars, you see that's the menu bar. So you just need to add your menu bar back in. And you could probably do that by right-clicking on the toolbar below the web address. Okay, so I don't know why the W3C service, maybe lots of people are checking their pages today because it seems to be hanging up. But nevertheless, it is easier to access the various web developer tools in Firefox versus in Chrome these days. And keeping in mind, of course, that these web browsers are moving targets. They keep on changing. Sometimes one becomes better than the other. Okay, so we have spent about a half hour just looking at various aspects of our questions and browsers and workflow type stuff. So at this point, we're going to jump into talking about today's assignments, unless there are any other questions, which, believe me, we can address as well. So does anybody else have questions before we move on to talking about styling with CSS? Okay, so let's put a little marker here and talk about CSS styling. As we talked about on the first day, and we remind ourselves on a regular basis, there are two primary elements to a web page. Actually, these days maybe there's three on many pages, but two for sure. One is the HTML code and one is the CSS styling. HTML is only responsible for the structure of the web page. anything having to do with the appearance of the page is the purview of CSS, or Cascading Style Sheets. So let's take a look at this document, CSS Basics. And this document is a 13-page document that I'm not going to go on I'm not going to spend the whole class going over this. I'm going to look at some of the more important overview elements of the page, and you're going to look at it on your own. So the question is, what are Cascading Style Sheets? Well, we know that each Cascading Style Sheet is a set of rules that provides consistent formatting for a single web page or an entire site. There are a variety of style sheets aside from the type that you create on your own. There are the browser style sheets. These are called the browser default style sheets. This is kind of interesting, and this is why over the years web developers have always had to accommodate browsers by creating workarounds and using an approach called zeroing out certain properties only to reinstitute those properties later. In other words, each browser is going to behave maybe slightly differently when it comes to the appearance of an unordered list, for example. Maybe the space between the bullet and the text of the unordered list is going to be a little different. So what people have done is they would zero out the margins on all lists and then enter a fixed pixel value. And that way it is overriding the browser default style sheet that maybe had a different value for the spacing between the bullet of a list item and the text of the list item. Okay? So, but that is one kind of style sheet, the browser default style sheet. In most modern browsers, user style sheets allow the user to apply their own style sheet. Now this is not something that most users do. Users are going to very few users are going to create their own style sheets. One reason that maybe an advanced internet browser user would create their own style sheet is maybe they're colorblind and pages that have certain colors they can't read. So they'd have to create a user style sheet that overrode the colors on somebody's website so they can view it in black and white. Or maybe they have some visual impairment and they need to make the text much bigger on their page. They could create a user style sheet to do that. Then there are author style sheets. That's what we're doing in this class. And then, of course, there are the various rendering methods that style sheets can have applied to them. So you can have handheld media types, print media types, projection media types, etc., etc. These are all different aspects that you can add to a style sheet by choosing a specific media type as part of your attribute of a style. Okay. The advantages of CSS-based layout is that it reduces the HTML file size, speeds up the page loading, and it has a consistency. The challenge of CSS-based layouts is that there are many formatting options. Sometimes the rules don't behave as anticipated. The anatomy of a rule. Each rule has two main parts and two subparts. The first part before the curly braces is the selector. The part that's within the curly braces is called the declaration block. Okay? So for example, if we see what you see on your screen here, H1, that's the selector. Colon, curly brace, font weight, colon, bold, semicolon, closed curly brace is the declaration block. The declaration has two elements. The first element is the property, which in this case, looking at this H1 font weight rule, is the property is font weight. The value is bold. Okay? A single rule can have multiple declarations, such as P, which is the selector here, standing for the paragraph tag. And we see that within the paragraph tag, this is shorthand CSS, we see the property color, the value red, semicolon. The property font size, colon, the value 12 px or pixels, semicolon. The property line height, colon, and the value 15 px, semicolon, and then close the declaration block. Okay, so that's the basic anatomy of a CSS rule. The location of the rules, there are three types: inline styles, which I almost never use or talk about; internal styles, which are part of the document. They're also known as embedded styles; and external styles, which is part of a separate CSS file. Okay, what about the cascade? The cascade determines which rules will be applied to a document. Browser styles have the lowest priority. User styles override browsers. Author styles have the highest priority and override the two. Although a user style sheet can have a declaration that says exclamation point important, and that can override the author style sheet. Okay, what about the specificity of a rule? The closer the rule is to the tag, the more specific it is, and then will override other rules. And this whole formula stuff here, this is great if this works for you. It does not work for me. So basically what I think about and what I try to train my students to do is to understand that the more general a rule is, the less powerful it is. In other words, if I'm creating, let's see, let me go to Dreamweaver here. Let's say I have this tag right here. Here's my current rules. I have a rule for H1 through H6, right? And this is my heading 2. Let's say I want to create a new H2 rule. I click New H2 Rules, and I'm going to make it the same specificity as what exists now. And I'm going to click on OK, and I'm just going to change the color of the text. And I'm going to click on OK. And all of my H2s showed up as red. Now I'm going to go to Code View. And there's only one reason that this rule is overriding the H2 that's already been defined over here. And the reason is that it's happening after. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to cut this rule, and I'm going to move it to the top right before, well, I'm going to put it currently after the existing H1 through H6 rules. Let me find them first. There's my H1 through H6 and paragraph rule. I'm going to paste that in there, and I'm going to add a rule to the existing H1 through H6, which is going to be color, but I'm going to set it to black. RGB 0, 0, 0, 1. We know the 1 in that case stands for what? Now I get to see who's still paying attention. Thank you, alpha. So here's the difference. So let's see, when we check it now, we're going to still see that the text is red. But if I go into Code View now, and take this rule, H2, cut it, and put it before this multiple rule selector, H1, H2, etc., because of the fact that this second rule, which refers to the H2 tag as well as a whole bunch of other tags, because of the fact that this happens after this rule, this color is going to override that color. So we're going to see that text as black. Okay? So there's a couple of things to notice about this. It doesn't matter that this rule is only referring to a single tag, and this rule is referring to 7 different tags. Both of the rules are equally specific. In other words, they're both just referring to the H1 tag. Okay? If, on the other hand, and the reason I'm showing you this has to do with specificity. If, on the other hand, I make this rule more specific, and this is how I can do it. I'm going to go to Design View for a second. I'm going to choose this H2 rule, and I see that it shows up inside of a div class called Content. So if I go back to my code view, and I go to the top of my screen where those rules are located, and I put before that H2, I put in dot content space H2. I've created a more specific rule. What is the name of that rule, by the way? Anybody know? When you create a rule that looks like what you see there on line 22. Well, the content part is a class, but the rule in its entirety there on line 22. Compound, yes. Contentful. No, it's called one of two things. Thank you, Maggie. It's called one of two things. It's either called a compound rule or a descendant. Yeah, 3 things. Thank you, Maggie. We can call it a content rule, a compound rule, a contextual selector, or a descendant selector. So what's happening here is that H2 is descending from content. And what this is saying is that when the H2 tag shows up within the content class, its color will be red. So what we notice when we go back to Design View is even though H2 comes here with the color of red, and that's followed by H2 coming here with the color of black, even though this color black comes second, this rule is more specific, so the color of the H2 tag only when it appears inside of the content div is going to be red. Ta-da! There's our H2 tag, which is red, but here's another H2 tag, which is black, and the reason that it's black there is because this H2 tag is not descending from content, it's descending from header. Okay? Okay, Tracy's asking, why is there inconsistency with the color choices here, that some color tags are using the hexadecimal system and the other color tags are using the RGBA? Okay, so that's a fair question. The answer is that this is a default document created in Dreamweaver. The default document in Dreamweaver is using hexadecimals. My general workflow these days is to use RGBA. So whatever setting I have created last within my color, within my style sheets, is going to be the choice that I've made with my stylings. In other words, if I right-click, let me see, here I'll go color. If I click on this to edit it, and then I click on this arrow, I can choose color cubes or a different color format that I showed you a couple of weeks ago. Whichever one I choose here, that's a sticky setting. That setting is going to continue for as long as I work on different pages. So because of the fact that my workflow these days is to work with RGBA, that's the last setting I used, and that's the setting that's being applied to the page. Does that make sense? Again, this is, one might ask oneself, I like RGBA because it supports alpha, which hexadecimal does not, so I can change the transparency of my backgrounds and of my text. Choices are good. Yeah. Other questions there? Okay, let's get back to talking about CSS. So, creating a simple style using the property inspector, I'm going to assume that you know how to do it, since I've showed that several times over this last couple of weeks. But this next part is important to review kinds of CSS selectors. We've got classes, IDs, compound or contextual selectors, and we'll start with those three. Class selectors can apply to many different elements on a page. They always begin with a period. IDs always begin with a hash mark. We can only have one ID on a page. In other words, pound header. You don't want to have 3 divs that are called pound header. The ID selector differs from the class selector, as I just said, in that it can only be applied once in any given page. But an ID selector carries more weight than a class selector. It is considered more specific. Compound or contextual selectors, as we just saw, descendant selectors are more specific than simply classes or IDs, because it's when one element is descending from another. It makes it more specific and thus more powerful. You can create group selectors, as we just saw with the H1 through H6, right? And then finally you have another type of compound selector, which are called pseudo classes and pseudo elements. That has to do with all of your hyperlinks as well as other things that you can read about. Okay, let's see. Let's go over the categories of the CSS rules dialog box. When you get to the CSS rules dialog box, there's the type category. The type category groups many but not all of the properties that affect the appearance of your type. It is where you can apply your font families, your font sizes, your font styles, your line heights, your weights, your variants, your text transforms, your text decorations, and your colors. Okay? There's a lot of debate in terms of when you create fonts, whether you should use pixels or M's. Okay? In all honesty, I really don't find that that's a big focus of mine anymore. Certainly when you size a document up or down, M's are going to be more pleasing to the eye, but it's become a little less of a focus for me. But there's people who are very passionate about that, and you can read more about that. I'm not going to, within the context of your homework assignments, grade you on whether you're using pixels or M's. But again, this is something that you can certainly read more about and make your own decisions on. Okay? Font style, normally we're going to use normal. Line height. Line height I find very important, and the reason that I find it important is because of readability. Having a little bit more space between each line makes it easier to read. And when it comes to line height, I always use M's to increase or to create my line height. Okay. Text decoration, you know, it's nothing that we really use. The most common use of the text decoration box is you might choose not to have a text decoration for hyperlinks when you're creating some styling design for a website. Okay. Font weight, we know that has to do with bold or normal. Font variant has to do with things like if you want to have small caps, which you might apply to one or two particular styles. Color has to do with your text color. Keep in mind, color and background color are different. Color is your text color, and it doesn't start with text color. It's just the word color. Don't worry about web-safe stuff anymore. That's ancient history. The background category. Not only can you specify colors and images for an entire page and page properties, but you can also specify them for individual elements. You can have background color, background images, and then of course when you do use a background image you want to choose if it repeats or not, and background attachment is if it's a fixed or a scrolling background. Okay, background position tells you if it starts in the top or in the middle or in the bottom or in the center. Okay, one thing about the background category, and I've complained to Adobe about this, is that currently CSS3, which is our current standard, allows you to have multiple background images attached to an element. But the background category dialog box only allows you to have one. So you have to go into code view if you want to create multiple background images. Why would you create multiple background images? Let's say you have like a page curl that you want on the top corner and the bottom corner, the top left and the bottom right. If you're having a document that's a div or a page that resizes, that it's set to a percentage, then you wouldn't be able to use a single background image. But with having the ability to attach multiple background images, you can attach a background image to the top left corner and the bottom right corner, and even if that container was resized, those images would still be in the correct place. Okay? So that's the background category. The block category defines space and alignment, word spacing, letter spacing, vertical alignment. Vertical alignment becomes important anytime you're working with tables. If you want the text to be pushed up to the top of a particular cell, you have to set vertical align to top. Okay? Then you've got some other things in the block category that aren't super important. The most important part of block category is display. There are times that you need to set the display of an element to a different value than its normal value. For example, if you want to make a hyperlink display as a block level element, and you'll see why in a couple of weeks, you have to manually go in and change the display of the hyperlink tag to display block. So that's all part of the block category. The box category is where we set things like widths, heights, padding, margin, floats, and clears. Out of all of those, the one that you will use the very least will be the height. Okay? There are times that you want to do that, but it is the least used out of that category. The box category is a category you visit quite a lot. How about, what else? You've got the page properties that I've already talked to you about, so I'm going to skip that for now. Border category. The border category is very specific to borders. It's just going to set your style, your width, and your color, top right, bottom, and left. There are a lot of new styles for CSS3 that also don't show up in the border category. The CSS styles dialog box in Dreamweaver is not incorporating as many of the CSS elements that the CSS3 elements that I would like to see. Then you've got the list category. The list category is important when you're working with unordered lists that you don't want to have a disk next to the list. For example, when you have a web page like this page right here, where essentially, I'm clicking on design and nothing's happening, so I'm going to be patient. Why am I hearing a little bell there? Let's go at what's going on. Oh, this block is doing something here. It is just binging away. What is going on? Let me close this page. It won't even let me close the page. There must be a dialog box open behind my screen here. Okay, so when you get into a situation like this where you have no idea why a particular window is closing, you force it to quit. So that's what I'm going to do. Goodbye, Dreamweaver. You're making me mad. Okay, now that I've dispatched Dreamweaver without any love, I'm going to open it back up. And oh, I see what's happening. Somehow my screen share went away. Okay, can you guys all hear me? For some reason, screen sharing just quit. I don't know why. Okay, so was it just for a moment that the screen sharing disappeared? Okay, so back to what I was saying, which is related to the list category. Thank you. So what I was saying about the list category is that you might have a document open, or you might be creating a document that has a bunch of hyperlinks. And these hyperlinks are to different pages, right? So this is a vertical nav menu. Your vertical nav menu, in order to adhere to the proper HTML semantics, it should be an unordered list. So a navigation menu, whether it be vertical or horizontal, the proper semantics for HTML is that that navigation menu consists of menu items. Just like when you go to a restaurant, I'll have one from column A and one from column B. Those links, homework 2 through homework 11, and the projects in the home page as well, those are all members of an unordered list. But I don't want to see the default round button sitting to the left of that. So that's where you use the list category to choose list style type none. Okay? And that's the most common use of that category. The positioning category is something that you use not that often. This is mostly used when you have absolutely positioned elements. And we talk about that somewhere in mid-semester. So don't worry too much about that category for now. Okay? Let's take a quick summary of the divs versus IDs and classes. So IDs and classes are CSS rules, while a div is an HTML tag. You put the IDs and classes inside of the div to format the page. Okay? So keep in mind that you can use as many divs as you want on a page, and basically when you create a page with a bunch of divs, if I created a file from scratch here, and I said layout, and I chose div, and I didn't even choose anything related to the div in terms of CSS. In code view, it's going to look like this. So then I could say div space ID equal content, right? So that's how you would construct an ID, or I could do the same thing with class, change that to class, right? And then of course I'd have to create rules that were associated with that ID or that class. But a div itself is no different than the body tag. It's simply an HTML rule. So apparently there's been some confusion about that, so that's why it's addressed. So that is the summary of the CSS dialog box. Now the CSS panel tab. As I mentioned to you several times, the CSS panel tab is one of the, if not the most used panel in Dreamweaver for me. It has two views. It's either all or current. Current is going to show you whatever element you currently have selected. And there are several parts to it. There's the summary part. There's the rules that are currently related to the element that you have selected. And then there are the properties of those rules. Then you've got the all choice within the CSS styles window. And that's going to list all of the rules in the document. You can choose any rule and see the rules that are the properties associated with that rule, but it is independent of what element you have selected on your page. Okay? Finally, there is the little icon at the bottom of the CSS panel, and there are three different icons there. There's the category view, the list view, and the set properties view. By default, working in most of the assignments that you're working on for this class, you will see that the choice is assuming we have the set properties listed. But if you're going to start getting into using more CSS3 rules, like I said earlier, that CSS dialog box doesn't support a lot of those CSS3 rules, but both the category view and the list view, especially list view, supports those. As you can see here, there's a whole bunch of rules that start with the word -moz. These are not things that you would be able to enter into your page through the CSS dialog box. For example, Moz border radius. If I clicked on that, it would bring up this Moz border radius rule, which refers to putting a curve around your container. In this case, I don't know what element that I was putting that on, but the point is that when you're in the list view, you can get access to a lot of rules that you do not see in the CSS dialog box. And this is the best place to make sure that you are inserting rules that are related to CSS3 in a painless manner. And a little bit more about this list view, you can see this -moz is referring to only which browser. Thank you, Maggie. Firefox, yes, and Christina. So, there are a lot of CSS3 rules that currently require separate lines of code for different browsers. That's, again, the pain associated with change and evolving standards. But you'll be able to see all of that types of stuff as you go through the properties panel, subpanel of the CSS panel in list view. You see the next set of rules is -ms, which has to do with which browser. Maggie's got this one. Windows, yeah. And then we have, okay, what about O? Maggie again. Good try. No. Anybody else? Linda? No, Java's not a web browser, and Christina's got it, Opera. So this has to do with rules associated with the Opera browser. What about WebKit? Hint, it's more than one. No, IE is the MS. Okay. In other words, when you see the -MS, that's referring to Internet Explorer for Microsoft. Safari and Chrome, that's correct. So WebKit are rules that you're going to be applying that are specifically targeted to both Safari and Chrome. Related to that, when you click on Live View inside of Dreamweaver, it's going to render the page as if it was in Safari and Chrome because it uses the WebKit rendering engine. I'm embarrassed to show you a page that doesn't have the images appearing, so I'm going to close that page for now. And what we're going to do right at this point, yes, way to go, Robin. At this point, it's 11:12. We're going to take a 10-minute break. We're going to start back up at 11. Let's make it a 13-minute break. We'll start back up at 11:25. I'll take you through the rest of the content that we need to cover for this week. So let's take our 12-minute break. Okay, welcome back, and we're talking still about cascading style sheets. Before I go, and we talked about the CSS rules, classes, contextual rules, pseudo classes, div tags, CSS IDs. Let's touch just for a moment on embedded and external style sheets. But before we do that, I want to finish up. By the way, here's my page with my picture showing up. I imported them from someplace else. Okay. I was mentioning before the break that when you want to apply a CSS3 rule, you're not going to do that by clicking on New Rule and then finding the information in any of those dialog boxes. So I'm just going to give you a quick example of how I would create a new CSS3 rule. I have my image selected on the screen. I click on this plus sign at the bottom of the CSS Styles panel that is for the new rule, and it is telling me it's because of the fact that I have the image tag selected, it's going to create a compound rule which has, when IMG is descending from the A tag, which is descending from a paragraph, which is inside of the content class, which is inside of the container class, that's a super specific rule. Okay? But for now, I'm just giving you an example. I could always make it less specific. But if I wanted to follow through with our discussion, which is about CSS3 here, what I would do is I would have clicked on that new rule icon, clicked on OK, and then just clicked on OK again. Because the rule that I want to apply is not going to show up in that list. Now when I select that image tag again, in the CSS Styles panel, you'll see here is the rule. It's the IMG tag when it's descending from all these other tags. And now I'm going to go down to where it says Moz border radius, right? and I can click on this, and I can add a border radius to the image. And now if I look at this rule, I'll go to Code View just to look at that rule for a second. You'll see I have on the left-hand side of my screen in split view, I have Moz border radius 10 pixels. I'm going to go to Design View, and now I'm going to click on the Live button, which has this page render as if it was in a specific browser rendering engine. So the question is, with the Moz border radius rule being applied, which is supposed to curve the corners of this picture, am I going to see those curved corners in live view within Dreamweaver right now? That's correct. It only shows up in Firefox, but here I am inside of Dreamweaver, which is going to be rendering the page as if it was in a specific browser. So I still have my question on the table. If I go into Live View, am I going to see rounded corners within Dreamweaver in Live View? Okay, you guys are going to have to vote on this. Here you got the check mark or the X. If you think in Live View I will see the rounded corners, you put the check mark. If you think I won't, you put the X. Let's see some voting here. Okay, Linda and Mary voted no. Well, okay, Linda and Mary voted no. Why did you vote no? No, no, it's not code proximity. Need to rest browser viewing in? I'm not sure what that means. Well, here, let's view it and let's see. Click on Live. Notice we do not see the rounded corners. The reason is because, as Maggie said earlier, this is going to show up in Firefox. But as I said earlier, Dreamweaver, when it is in live view, uses the WebKit rendering engine. So take a look at what happens now. I go back to this tag in CSS. I scroll down to where it says dash WebKit border radius. I click on that and make it a corner radius of 10 also. And now when I go to live view, take a look what happens. Now I see my border curved. Because Dreamweaver live view renders the page as if it is viewing the page in Safari and Chrome. Ta-da. Any questions about that? There are, as I said earlier, there are at least 3 different values when you're working with many CSS3 styles that you'd have to put in. the default value would be border radius 10 pixels. And eventually this will be enough for all of the browsers, but that's at least like a year away. In the meantime, we have to target individual browsers. So we might end up having to have, if we wanted to really target all the browsers out there, we'd probably have that number of lines of code just for border radius. So we've got the generic border radius code, Moz border radius, which is for Firefox, WebKit border radius, which is for Safari and Chrome, MS border radius, Microsoft, which is for IE, and O border radius, which is for Opera. Okay? So that's a little advanced stuff, but, you know, doesn't hurt to talk about it now. Okay. At this point, isn't there a way to place code that will address all browsers so that these issues won't be an issue? Dave, I'm sorry for laughing. Yes, the way to do it is to get all of the browser developers to agree on everything. There are some JavaScript methods that people have talked about that can be used to address some of these issues. But when it comes to simply working in Style Sheet, you have to target different browsers for various CSS3 rules. There's a page, one of the many pages out there. Oh, okay, well, it'd be interesting to know what she taught, but when let me see if I can find the page. Okay. There is a page called caniuse.com, and this page will talk to you about which browsers support which rules. So for example, if you're looking at CSS border radius, it shows you which browsers support border radius. I'm not sure if it shows you the associated rules. Okay, here, borderradius.com, a generator, right? So we can go out to this site and type in 8, and it generates that rule. Okay? But you still have to take those 3 lines of code and put it into your CSS3, into your style sheet. Okay, so you can have programs that help you generate those rules, but that's what Dreamweaver does as well. You just have to know which browsers are associated with which tags. And you know, there's really no way around that if you want to start using CSS3 now. Okay? And Dave, I am interested in hearing more about, you're welcome, what Linda taught last year related to placing a code that will address all browsers. I don't know of that. Okay, so thank you. So let's talk about the homework to finish up. Class 4 homework, hw3.html, due February 13th. Assignment value, 3 points. And by the way, as a reminder, The assignment is due on February 13th, which is next Wednesday, but the lecture is going to be held on February 12th because of the fact that I'm having knee surgery on the 13th. And I'm not going to be conducting the lecture from the knee place. Okay? So that homework is due the 13th, but next week's lecture is on the 12th. Watch the 6 videos called Understanding CSS Basics. And I had one student that mentioned that they could only watch some of them. I would suggest that because of the fact that all of those videos are loading up on a page, you might want to take some, let the page load up. You want to give that page to take some time to load up. Yeah, maybe refreshing the page helps as well. But all 6 of those videos are on that one page. And this page by Brian Woods is a really nice page to understand the rules and styling and page layout basics. A lot of the stuff that you already know, but in this world of web design, it doesn't hurt to review it. After you open the after you do that, you want to examine the Homework 3 example web page, which looks like this. Okay. You want to then remove the text in the content. Then you want to go to Homework 3 in your HTML. Let me rephrase that. Then you want to open up Dreamweaver and open up your hw3.html page. You created that page during the 2nd week. You're going to remove the text in the content div and replace it with a summary of each of the videos on that Understanding CSS Basics video page. Then you're going to place an image maximum of 400 pixels by 400 pixels. And with the image selected, go to the Properties panel and choose Class Float Right to make the image float right. Now, you're not having to create that class because on these default pages that your hw3.html page is based on, that class was already in the page. Then you're going to save and upload the web page to your website by selecting Preview in Browser. Okay? If you're one of those people who chose not to have a check mark next to testing because you don't like to do it that way, then you have to use the up and down arrows. In other words, here's my Homework 3, and if I did not have a check mark in the testing server of my site definition, I would have to choose Put in order to make sure the page was uploaded. Yes, it is a piece of cake. This is a piece of cake homework assignment. No doubt about it. There was one other thing that I just crossed my mind I wanted to mention, but oh yeah, I remember now. Are those arrows the same as the ones to the right? Yes, they are. Piece of pie instead. Okay. Well, you guys are exactly on the page that, you're risk takers. You like to, I don't even like to have all of that stuff in the house because I'll just go right through it. So Christina's been doing double uploading. Yep, you're not the first, nor will you be the last. Last thing I want, okay, I'm going to try to keep to my goal for today, which is the only thing that I'm going to do fresh is eat fresh fruit. Okay, that's my goal. It's a tough one. Teaching this class is a lot easier than keeping that goal. Okay, last thing I want to share with you is if you have created these pages as we have since the beginning of this class, you'll have known that the Cascading Style Sheets at the top have a lot of comments in them which are useful sometimes, but actually make it a little harder to read at others. Here's a great little thing that you can do. You can choose Now I'm going to have to dig for this to find it. Yeah, you can choose Command, and you could choose, where is it? I'm looking for it. I'm looking for it. There's a way to remove the Dreamweaver comments. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, I'm gonna look behind the scenes of when I can't find something. What do? I go to my search engine and type in remove Dreamweaver comments. Remove non-Dreamweaver, remove all comments that were not inserted by Dreamweaver. Select removing comments from the code. What is the best strategy to remove the code? Let's see what they say here in Adobe. Oh, hush. I'm not going to answer that. Well, there is a way, and I am going to, I guess, have to show you. Some people say, well, why would you bother? It's not necessary. No, if you want to remove the code, you want to do it for a reason, and there is a way to do it, but I guess I'll have to cover that next class, because is it in reports? Remove empty? No. No, okay, I'll cover it next class. But there is a nifty way to remove all of your comments, and that way your tags, you have a lot less stuff inside of your document. Let's see, apply comment. Oh, maybe this will work. Remove comment. No, that didn't do it. Okay, I'll cover this next week. Well, hiding it, you can do that. I'll show you real quickly. If you wanted to hide it, you just select it. And then you can click on this minus sign, and then that comment is hidden. But I do want to show you next week how you can remove all of your comments. I'll just find it and then make a note of it. So that takes us to the end of today's class. I do hope that next week I'm going to comment to you about a couple other things that I think are important for us to deal with. So I will see you all next Tuesday, not next Wednesday. Nevertheless, your homework isn't due till next Wednesday, as per all other classes. Any other questions before we finish up? Thank you. Just going to clean up some loose meniscus in there. See you all next week. Thanks a lot.